Welcome to Hollywood Information. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into 12 films from the 1970s that would never be made today. The 1970s were a bold, rebellious, and often shocking era in Hollywood. Filmmakers pushed boundaries with themes, characters, and storytelling that reflected the social upheaval of the time. 1. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange is one of the most notorious films ever made. It follows Alex DeLarge, a violent youth who delights in assault, rape, and chaos, all set to classical music. The movie's unflinching depiction of brutality, combined with its stylized presentation, shocked audiences then, and would ignite even bigger outrage today in the modern era. The film would face intense criticism for glamorizing violence and sexual assault. Its themes of psychological conditioning and state control are still relevant, but the way the film presents these ideas would likely be considered deeply problematic. Streaming platforms, censorship boards, and social media outrage would make its release nearly impossible without heavy changes. 2. Last Tango in Paris, 1972. This film became infamous not just for its explicit sexual content, but for what later came out about its production. Last Tango in Paris centers on a raw and disturbing sexual relationship between characters played by Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider. Today, the film would be completely unacceptable, not only because of its graphic nature, but because of ethical violations behind the scenes. Modern filmmaking places much more emphasis on consent, actor safety, and transparency. This movie stands as a reminder of how differently power and responsibility were handled in 1970s Hollywood. 3. Straw Dogs, 1971. Directed by Sam Peckinpah, Straw Dogs is a deeply unsettling psychological thriller that explores masculinity, violence, and repression. The film includes an extremely controversial sexual assault scene that has been debated for decades in today's climate. The way this scene is framed would spark outrage. Modern audiences are far less tolerant of narratives that blur the lines around consent. While the film aimed to challenge viewers, its execution would likely be deemed irresponsible and harmful by today's standards. 4. Dirty Harry, 1971. Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry introduced audiences to a police officer who believes the law is an obstacle to justice. The film suggests that extreme force and vigilante justice are sometimes necessary in the 1970s. This resonated with audiences frustrated by crime. Today, however, the glorification of police brutality and disregard for civil rights would be heavily criticized. In an era of widespread debate over law enforcement accountability, Dirty Harry would face intense backlash and protests. 5. The Exorcist, 1973. Although still considered a horror masterpiece, The Exorcist pushed religious and moral boundaries in ways that shocked the world. The film includes disturbing imagery involving a possessed child, combined with deeply religious themes. If released today in its original form, it would still be controversial, especially regarding its portrayal of a young girl in extreme situations. While horror has evolved, certain scenes would likely be edited or censored to avoid public outrage and ethical concerns. 6. Death Wish, 1974. Death Wish tells the story of a man who becomes a vigilante after his family is attacked. The movie promotes the idea that personal revenge is not only justified but necessary in today's society, where gun violence and vigilantism are hot-button issues. This film will be considered dangerously inflammatory. Critics would argue that it encourages violence and undermines the justice system. While reboots exist, the original's tone would not survive modern scrutiny. 7. Taxi Driver, 1976. Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver is a dark character study of loneliness, mental illness, and alienation. Travis Bickle is an unstable man whose violent fantasies eventually erupt. Although still praised today, making Taxi Driver exactly the same way now would be extremely risky. Its portrayal of violence, obsession, and a young female character in distress would face intense debate. Modern studios would likely demand significant changes to avoid controversy. 8. Mandingo, 1975. Mandingo is one of the most uncomfortable films of the decade. It depicts slavery through exploitation, sexual violence, and racism, often in a sensationalized manner. Today, this film would be universally condemned for its handling of historical trauma. Modern audiences demand sensitivity, respect, and authenticity when dealing with such topics. Mandingo would be criticized for exploiting suffering rather than educating viewers. 9. The French Connection, 1971. This gritty crime thriller won awards and praise for its realism, but also includes racial stereotypes and aggressive policing tactics. If released today, the film would be scrutinized for its portrayal of law enforcement and minority characters. While technically brilliant, its worldview reflects attitudes that are increasingly challenged in modern cinema. 10. Deliverance, 1972. Deliverance follows a group of men on a wilderness trip that turns into a nightmare. The film includes one of the most disturbing assault scenes in cinema history. Today, this scene would be handled very differently, or possibly removed altogether. While the film intended to shock and unsettle, modern storytelling tends to approach such material with greater care and responsibility. 11. The Last House on the Left, 1972. Wes Craven's debut film is infamous for its raw depiction of violence and revenge. It blurs the line between horror and exploitation in today's film industry. Such graphic brutality would struggle to find mainstream support. The lack of moral distance and emotional safety for viewers would make this film nearly impossible to release without massive changes. 12. Saturday Night Fever, 1977. Many people remember Saturday Night Fever as a fun disco movie, but beneath the music lies a much darker story involving misogyny, racism, and sexual violence that, if released today without changes, audiences would be shocked by its tone. While the film reflects the realities of its time, modern viewers would demand a more responsible portrayal of its themes. Final thoughts: these 12 films from the 1970s would never be made today in their original form, but they remain powerful reminders of a raw and fearless era of filmmaking. Studying them helps us understand the evolution of cinema and the values that shape storytelling across generations. If you enjoyed this deep dive into classic Hollywood history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends who love movies. Thanks for watching.